Made it up. Look at that shit. I have a hard time believing the drone got this high. Because, holy shit. Look at that's a mountain. I guess I'm standing on a mountain. But, pretty intense. What's up, droners? And guess what? It is time for another droner dialogue. And this time we're going to be talking about a trip that I recently had to Peru, where I encountered some of the most challenging flight conditions that I've ever encountered. And I want to talk to you guys about how I dealt with them, what I would recommend for you to do to deal with them better than I did, and what it's like flying in high altitudes. So let's get into it. All right, so I can't tell you exactly all that much specifically about the project, but I will say that I was hired to work on a documentary that was being filmed in Peru a while back. And I got hired onto doing it, and it was kind of like, for me, like almost, I would say it was very much so a charity project for me. I got called, they didn't have the money that it would cost if you had to hire me, but they told me about the project, so I believed in the project, and I said, you know what, I want to do this, it'll be an adventure, and it's the right thing to do. You know, I know your budget doesn't really cover somebody to be able to be a professional drone pilot to do something like this, because normally you gotta hire a team to do it, but what you're doing is really admirable. I want to be able to help, and I'm doing okay right now. Who am I not to help somebody and some people who actually do need the help, doing good things for other people? So I've took it upon myself saying, let me do it, it's the right thing to do, and goodness gracious, it was a challenge. After finding out, I talked to the director and the producer of the project to find out they've actually never worked with anyone with drones before at all. So their knowledge of drones was literally nothing. And also them giving me information, because, you know, as a drone pilot, like I've told you guys before, you have to make sure you ask a lot of questions in pre-production. Like when somebody wants you to do drone work, you have a lot of questions. Obviously the money thing, where am I flying, you know, like, you know, what are the hours that I'm flying, what am I going to be filming, you know, permits, location, you know, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of questions that go into it. But one of my biggest questions is like, where specifically in Peru am I flying? Because, you know, Peru is much bigger than most people think it is. It's a giant country that has flatlands, it has grasslands, it has jungles, and it has mountains. And also it has cities. And so I was like, where am I gonna be? And they're like, you're gonna be near Cajamarca. And I was like, all right, I don't know what that means, but I found out that that's a city that is in the mountains, it's really cold, and it's also very windy, because the mountains in Peru are very windy. Mountains in general are very windy. Pro tip, mountains are very windy when you get up high. So let's talk a little bit about high altitude flying. So when I first started to go, I realized that all the things I'm gonna have to do, I'm gonna have to have in a backpack. So that kind of rules out the Inspire or the Matrice or any kind of drones like that. I immediately was like, this is gonna be a Phantom job. I'll bring my Mavic Air as a backup drone, but I'm bringing the Phantom 4 Pro as my main primary bird. So I brought the Phantom 4 Pro and the Mavic, and I used my Polar Pro backpack to be able to hold everything, which is incredible. It can hold like 15 Mavic batteries, as well as like my laptop and all the other stuff. It's the greatest travel backpack I've had for drones. Highly recommend it, it's amazing. I take that, I go, and we get there, and we weren't shooting anywhere near the city that I mentioned before. We actually were shooting outside of it. Every day we'd be driving like 3 to 4 hours outside of it, and to even the higher highlands. So we're like at 16,000 feet every day. Now, one thing I knew is that for my Inspire, I had high altitude blades that were just slightly different blades. I actually don't know the real difference. I think they're a little bit curved a little bit differently, and like they're a little bit thinner to be able to deal with like less air to, you know, to wave against or to propel against. Yeah, propel against. But I could not find any high altitude blades for the Mavic. I mean, for the Phantom or for the Mavic, just because pretty much all the forums would say just fly it. You know, it's gonna work, and which is true. It does work. It did fly just fine. But I highly underestimated how much wind it was gonna be and how consistent the wind was gonna be, because there's no weather reports for like literally being off the charts. Like, I mean, we were in places that were so remote that like even today, if you were like, Brennan, show me on a map where you were, I'm like, I have no idea, because we were just literally in the middle of these mountain ranges, like walking miles out to get to where we're going, or driving, like I said, 3 to 4 hours, and then walking up a mountain for a couple hours. So it was just very, very, very intense physically. Altitude sickness is a real thing. But either way, for the drone. So for the drone, it was very, very high winds. I'd say probably sustained winds of about 30 miles an hour that were changing. So changing directions. Now, why that's really important to you as a professional drone pilot is you need to know which way the wind is blowing to make sure that you can get your drone back to you. And also you need to know if the wind is blowing the drone so you can't get away. You can't get it back to you, then you have to know where you can land it in every direction that the wind is blowing it. One situation that I've mentioned before is that I had a tailwind, which means that's the wind blowing on the butt of the drone as I'm flying away from myself. I had a tailwind that was taking me out to go fly in South Carolina to get me out to shoot this bridge. And then on the way back, obviously I had a headwind, which is blowing against the drone coming back, and I almost lost the drone because the battery is being depleted so heavily on the way back as opposed to how it was on the way out. So I was hyper aware of that, and I highly recommend you always pay attention to which way the wind is blowing when you put your drone up. Now this, I believe the Phantom is rated to go up to about 30, maybe 40 mile an hour winds. This was testing every single limit of that. Because like I said, it was about 30, maybe 20, 25, 35 sustained mile an hour winds, and it was intense because there will also be gusts that I think will be going up to 50. Now I didn't have a wind meter, but I do know that you couldn't stand up straight when the gusts would hit. So it was pretty intense when you're up there, and it's just howling the whole time, and it's freezing, and I don't like cold. So taking off, what I had to do is, since we're on mountains, there wasn't that much flat space. So I was actually part of a crew that none of them spoke any English. Everybody only spoke Spanish. I have broken Spanish. And so I had to try to use the people I was with to be not only the base for me to take off, as well as be my visual observers, because I'm looking at the screen and they didn't have the budget for me to bring somebody else with me. So I have a visual observer who doesn't speak English, who I need to make them understand that they have to pay very close attention to where the drone is in the air because it's so windy, and because I'm not looking at the drone all the time, I'm looking here. Got them to figure out how to do that. And also hold the drone up and let it go when I say let it go. That was challenging as well. That took some coordination. Got all that done. Got all that figured out. And then anyway, with all of that kind of precautions that I had, I still lost the Phantom 4 Pro.
Story?
Yeah. Flying at this lake right here, and the drone just disappeared. Like, straight up just disappeared. It was just like lost connection, gone. Like, gone. I have a backup, so I still got all the shots, but literally. So now we're going up this hill because I was flying next to this hill right here, and we're gonna look for it. Do I think we're gonna find it? Probably not. I'm really sad about it, because this is my favorite drone, and it's gone. It was just like, yeah, you know, deuces, I like this place. Yeah, gone, lost it. And when I say lost it, here's exactly what happened. I took off with the drone, flying all happily. I'm filming this lake at the time, this giant lake, this huge lake up on top of this mountain. And I'm filming it, I take off, I go up to about 250 feet, and I start going around and doing a parallax shot of the lake. And as I'm going on the parallax shot, video, like I said, about 30 seconds into the flight, I know that it's up and away that way. I know that my visual observers, I had to talk to them beforehand, keep an eye on the drone, keep an eye on the drone. They're watching the drone. So I'm watching, and then I just lose signal. I'm like, oh, okay, well I know it's over there somewhere. I look up, I don't see it. I was like, hey, you know, where's the drone, guys? They're like, oh, yo no sé, no sé. Nobody knows where the drone is. And that's what I say when I say I lost this drone. Like, it was just gone. Like, that's the first time anything like that has ever happened to me. The best theory that I have is that a giant gust of wind just literally just took it and smashed it into the side of the mountain or something like that, because there was literally nothing out there except for mountains and grass. So, spent probably about 2 hours walking through the mountain trying to figure out where it was, because it had returned home on, so I thought it might come back. It did not do that. I also know that when the battery gets critically low, the drone will just land itself. I thought it might not have just crashed, you know, maybe it just landed itself somewhere. Never was able to find the drone. Had to buy a new Peruvian Phantom 4 Pro, which I now have, which is awesome. And we're able to complete the shoot with that. Actually, the backup drone, which you always should have, was a big deal for this whole process, because I had to fly the Mavic Air for the rest of that day, because obviously I didn't find that drone. Still got all the shots on the Mavic Air. They still look good. The footage does not compare to the Phantom 4 Pro, but it worked for the project because their project was in standard definition. So, you know, you shoot it in 4K on the Mavic, it's still gonna work. It's not gonna look exactly as good. Quality of the pixels isn't gonna be where you want it to be, but it's better than nothing. And I just pretty much kept it really close to me. You know, when I was flying, because like I said, it was that windy to blow away a Phantom 4 Pro, then obviously a Mavic is gonna have real issues. So I just kept the Mavic super close to me, like, you know, maybe within 150 feet of me at all times, and just doing like really low to the ground shots, and still getting shots of this lake, but I never took it up any higher than like 25 to 30 feet, because I lost the Phantom 4 Pro. I was terrified. But after that, I also had other issues because we were staying in a hut on top of one of these mountains that was terrifyingly cold. And terrifyingly cold to me means that, you know, there was a cup of water. I had a bottle of water that I had next to my head in the bed that I was sleeping in, and I woke up and the bottle of water was frozen next to me. That tells you how cold it was inside. Now, I didn't think ahead of time, and I hope you'll never make this mistake either, is that you have to keep your batteries at a certain temperature to be able to fly them, or they just won't work. And that temperature is definitely above freezing. So the next morning, the director wanted me to get morning shots of the hut that we were staying in to be able to help give establishing shots of how desolate this place is. And I could not do it because none of my batteries were warmed up. If your batteries are too cold, here's what you do to warm them up. Do not put them over a fire. What you do is you put them in your pockets. Put them in your pockets and just walk around. Your body will warm them up. Your body is warm enough to warm up the batteries and get them up to the 15 degrees Celsius that they have to be, 15 or 16 degrees Celsius that they have to be able to be optimal flying temperature so it doesn't drain your batteries. Another lesson that I learned is that, no, I knew this lesson. One thing that also you should know about this trip is that batteries will, like drone batteries will drain a car battery easily. So I had a inverter because we didn't have any power where we were staying. So yeah, this was a real adventure, guys. But I had an inverter that I hooked to the car battery while we were out there for the van that we took out there. And I told the driver, apparently nobody listens to me, keep the van on. Keep the van on when these are charging. And he's like, okay. And I put the batteries on there for the Phantom 4 Pro, I charge them, I walk away, I come back, the dude is asleep in the car with the car off. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, so sorry. I woke him up, turned the car on, he turns the car back on. He's like, so sorry. I was like, do not turn the car off while these are charging. He's like, no problem. So same exact thing happens again. I go to bed, come back, next morning, guess what? We no longer have a car because this guy didn't turn it on. Keep it on while the batteries are charging, and the battery went bad. And like I told you before, we're literally in the middle of nowhere. So it took us all day to be able to get that van, to be able to get a new battery. And the van was in the middle of, right in front of the hut where all the shots had to be. There wasn't supposed to be a van. And everybody was mad at me because the guy didn't listen to me. And also I'm the only one who speaks English, who doesn't speak very good Spanish. So it made it very difficult to explain how this guy didn't listen to me. When I told him a bunch of times, even woke him up to tell him again that he was messing up. Either way, I got the shots. That's what's important. I got the shots. And I learned really, really valuable lessons. So visual observers, super important. Always want to fly with your visual observer. Make sure they actually understand what's going on. Make sure your battery temperatures are managed the way you're supposed to. One other thing I didn't talk about was media management. When you're flying in high-risk scenarios like I was, with high wind, slightly cold batteries, and in the mountains, every single time that I changed batteries, I also changed media. So I brought like 15 micro SD cards so that every single flight that I did, I could change the batteries. I always have as many batteries as I do. I always have as many SD cards as I do batteries. So I just made sure that every single time I flew, I changed it out in case I lost the drone, which did happen. So I only lost literally half of one shot when I lost the drone. So just being smart like that and planning in high risk scenarios like that, you just gotta make sure you're okay. High altitude flying, I actually didn't find any issues with it. The drone flew wonderfully. Outside of the high wind, it did a really good job. It handled the high altitude way better than my body did. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The only other thing I'll say is when you're flying in foreign countries, make sure that you do look at their laws and regulations. You can normally find all that online, and it will make your life a lot easier at customs. Even though it doesn't make your life easy at customs, I still had so much trouble at customs. Even though I had all the paperwork, even though I called everybody, even though I had all the permits, I had all the stuff I was supposed to have, and it still was just like, they just weren't used to seeing drones. They weren't used to seeing people coming in with them. So it became a whole thing. So you gotta put down the percentage of the value of the piece that you're bringing in, try to get it back at the end, and it just takes hours. So plan to have a lot of extra time in the airport, because a lot of countries that may be third world or just smaller countries or just any countries that's anywhere you go, they might not be as efficient as what you might be used to. So you can spend a lot of time just getting through bureaucracy to be able to get wherever you want to go. But in the end, I'm very happy that I did it. I learned a lot. I got some excellent footage, and I had a lot of fun. So yeah, if you ever get an opportunity like that, make sure you plan accordingly, do your best, and have fun with it, because that's what you gotta do. Droners, thank you so much for listening to this long-winded Droner Dialogue. I hope you learned something. I learned more than I cared to. But if you want to learn more, we have more Droner Dialogue episodes right here. Or if you want to see the greatest intro video that has ever been done for a drone channel, we're modest around here, and you can see our modesty in that video. As always, subscribe to show us your support. We really, really appreciate you guys doing that, and make sure you stay fly.